This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by Dragon Nanny, the new graphic novel by Justin Curry and GMB Kamichuk and Will Little, now available at chasingartwork.com.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I am your host, Gregory Kamichuk, known professionally as GMB Kamichuk, and my long-suffering co-host joins me today, Justin Curry, known the world over as Chasing Artwork. You can't see it because this is an audio medium, but I am looking from my house to the studio where Justin is building things out of cardboard and has revealed to me a very special breaking news bulletin about how you two can save an enormous amount of money on shipping. Justin, reveal your shipping secrets.
All right. Yeah, because this has been, I just had my store open. February 1st, I opened my store. And so I got a bunch of orders and was fulfilling all those orders. And with one of my first stores, I was shipping everything flat, which worked for 95% of the orders. But there's always prints, yes, right? Yes, it's true. We're talking about 12 by 18 prints. So I was shipping things flat and I was packaging the crap out of them. But like, no matter how much I packaged a flat package, it seemed like that magic number was at 2.5% of orders were showing up with like ding corners or pretty damaged, or like it didn't seem to be the best solution. So the next best thing, I kind of just took cues from other artists who sell prints online, are like heavier duty tubes, right? Like you roll the print, doesn't hurt the print, and they're very durable. So then I started shipping those out, and I noticed that as soon as I put into my little program that it was a tube and not a box, the shipping jumped up quite a bit. And I couldn't quite figure this out. So I asked my mail guy who comes and picks up all the packages, like, why am I paying like sometimes double or even triple when it's going overseas for a tube when a box the exact same size is so much cheaper? And he didn't know, but he went away and he did some research and he came back and he explained to me that the reason for that is conveyor belts at the sorting facilities. If it's a tube, it can roll down the conveyor belt or roll up or get stuck. So tubes really slow down some of the sorting process. I don't exactly know, but he says that's one of the main reasons. I'm sure there's others, but one of the main reasons why tubes have a surcharge attached is they roll on the conveyor belt. So what I started doing, now that I know that's the main problem, is I took my tubes and I cut 2 pieces of cardboard, flat cardboard in an L, and I taped that corner onto the tube. So it's now a tube half box, but the point is it won't roll. And I just started doing that, and I double checked with the mail guy and he said, it's not gonna roll, that'll work, that'll be fine. And just to give you an idea of like how much money this saves me, it's worth doing. For sending a package to the States, for me to send one of my prints in my packaging is around, I wanna say like $14. If it's in the tube, that exact same size, it's $21. So it's a $6 difference for me to tape that little piece of cardboard on it to stop it from rolling. And it seems kind of silly, but it works.
Silly, but if you're talking about 100 orders, that's an enormous amount of money.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like when I only open my store every once in a while for kind of a big burst of sales. So it's not like 1 or 2 orders. It's usually like, over a dozen to like 40 different orders. So times that by $6 an order, like you've saved a good amount of money for just a little bit of arts and crafts.
Yeah, totally. That's a Jack Kirby artist edition right there, at least. Yeah. That's how I measure everything and its value these days, is whether or not how many Jack Kirby artist editions I could buy with that money. And right, this is my life now. So this actually is a good segue into some other things I wanted to talk to you about today, which is the change that this new world has wrought upon us. right? We have come
Yeah.
low through these nearly 12 months now of ups and downs and twists and turns, and we've settled in, at least in my house, into something that feels frighteningly normal. Even though when I was was clearing my camera roll off, looking at videos from all of our travels, it feels so different and yet so normal to me now. What do you think of these changes are forever changes? How many of these things are just the way they are now, even if the world goes back to normal? Even if tomorrow they said, okay, we're going to send flying saucers around the world, dusting everyone with the vaccine they need, snap our fingers, it's all perfect. There's some things you wouldn't change back, I feel like. I know there's some for me.
Yeah. It kind of stresses me out to think about that transition back into normalcy. And is it going to, like, this happened so quickly, right? Like, I just remember, like, last February when everything was kind of starting, like the world was normal one week and then the next week it was suddenly very different.
Remember, you were like, I'm going skiing, and I was like, don't cross the
Yeah.
border, they're going to close the border, and you're like, nah.
Yeah.
And then you didn't go, and they closed the border like a few hours later.
Mm-hmm. I think we would have, like, just squeaked by, but it would have been terrifying. Yeah, so, like, when the world goes back to normal, how quick of a transition is that going to be, right? Like, are they, there's such a focus on the vaccine and stuff like that. Is it going to be like in under a month suddenly, everything's open back up? Or is it going to be like this slow, gradual change? Or what? I don't exactly know what that looks like. But the idea of going back to normal, like, stresses me out so much, or it stresses me out now because I've developed this whole new method and routine of doing things. The idea of going back and losing this COVID routine that I've got, yeah, it's kind of stressful.
Has I've made this joke in many different ways, probably on many different episodes, that I am a introvert by nature, but an extrovert by training.
Right.
And that I sort of take after my mom and my introvert tendencies. And when I was growing up, my dad, a very powerfully motivated extrovert, would kind of bring me everywhere and force me to talk for myself and make me, like, meet strangers. And, at the time you kind of hate it, but it made me have no fear of the crowd. When I need it, I can turn that on. But
right.
The introvert part of myself, I find getting more and more powerful, and, like, rising up to, like, overshadow all this, like, extrovert training and all this, like, public, persona. And I was going through I saw a video of myself signing. Someone had taken, I don't know who it was actually, but they had taken a video. There was a bunch of people lined up, and I was signing a bunch of books, and it was like a really, just like I was just, like, all puffed up and, like, really proud of the work we had done. I think it might have been even just the Calgary art book, but there was about 10
right.
people deep who wanted me to sign the piece that was in the Calgary art book, which you can see previous episodes for what we're talking about. But in the video, I'm just kind of overcome and obviously a little bit surprised that there's all these people there. And then when I'm done, whoever it is that was taking the video says, how'd that make you feel? And the look on my face is such utter surprise and, like, a mixture of pride and embarrassment that I was just like, man, yeah, remember what the public was like? Remember what meeting people was like? Remember what strangers in front of you was like? I haven't had that in, like, a year now almost. And it's so weird. But I like you, I kind of felt a little bit nervous to rejoin that side of the world we were in.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Well, the housekeeper, the cook, the butler, and the upstairs maid don't think so.
Well, I can't help but they think.
I've been thinking a lot about RPGs and RPG storylines and mechanics and how it works. It's all tying into one of my upcoming projects. But I always felt like big events like conventions or art galleries were kind of like the boss battles for you as an artist. And all that work you do when you're at home alone is the grinding, right? That's when you're leveling up. That's when you're getting everything better and getting advancing. And then the boss battle to advance the story is those events outdoors.
I love that metaphor.
In public, right? And so it's been so long since we've had a boss battle, since there's been a convention or a gallery or anything like that. Yeah, it's been so nice to just kind of take a year and just grind.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's true. And for the dear listener who doesn't know what an RPG is, we're talking about a role-playing game. And the rise of digital gaming has meant that RPG, which used to mean tabletop gaming, has taken over. So now when you say TTRPG, you mean old school role-playing, which is a project I'm working on right now. And Justin is talking about RPGs, which is like a modern thing, which is actually a good metaphor in the way that the world changes and we have new terms for things. Yeah. But it really doesn't change all that much at all. The metaphor is the same. This idea that
just changing the words.
Yeah, we just changed the words. So yeah, maybe we're fretting for no reason. Maybe the change won't be as sudden as we think. It feels sudden when I compare like the old world to this world, but it took 12 months. Kind of like a lobster boiling in the pot. Like we didn't know until it was too late that it was all over, right? So,
well, did we keep getting that stick of like, well, in July it'll all be open up again? Oh, well, no, in August it'll be back to normal. Well, October probably back to normal.
I had the whispers from inside the medical community to not take any of that seriously. So I wasn't there wasn't as much of a stick or carrot for me.
No.
But like, what has changed in your actual artist practice?
So we were kind of talking about this a bit before the podcast started. And we were talking about our work ethic and inspiration in pandemic times versus before. And I was saying how usually when we're on the road and I'm doing like 30 events a year, at those events, I would be exposed to like new artists doing crazy, awesome things. And it would kind of fire me up to like up my game as well, right? Like the inspiration would be high, but I couldn't be working on things until I got back home. And then when I got back home, I usually only had a week or two before I had to like go to the next event. So I didn't have time to really sit and get as much done as I ever wanted. But now I don't think I'm getting as many doses of that competitive inspiration, but I'm able to sit and focus and work for longer and longer periods. And all my pieces have taken like 5 to 10 times the amount of time that I used to take. Like all my pieces are so much more involved because I'm not just rushing to that next event. I have time to do it to take as long as I want on the piece. And so I feel like this last year, I've gotten a lot better than I would have had I been on the road, if that makes sense. I think I would have done just as many pieces, but I would have been traveling and those pieces wouldn't have had as much time put into them.
Well, and I think it's fair to say that
kind of.
Yeah, it does. Well, here, tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but you and I think, both have the habit that we will fill the available time with the work we're capable of given that time. You and I have both been able to say like, okay, we've got 3 days, we're going to do this many pieces, whatever we can get done. We won't let the time running out prevent us from finishing. We're pretty good at time managing so that at the end of that time, the pieces are finished. If we had had twice that amount of time, they would have been more hours put into each piece, but right? So what you're saying is that there's been more detail and care put into each available piece of artwork. Do you think then the consumer will notice the difference if you have to go back to the way it was?
I don't know. Yeah. So thinking about going back to kind of how it was before, like if I could have everything, if I could, the perfect schedule in my mind would, because I would love to do like in-person events and conventions and stuff like that, but I love this amount of downtime. So in my perfect scenario, from like April to I'd have a month on and then 4 months off, and a month, like I would kind of group my events and have just a crazy April, May, and then have the summer off, and then September's crazy, and then go dormant again until, like I think I'd batch them more instead of it being so much all the time, because having this much downtime, I think like even you said, like Dragon Nanny, that book, like I feel like it was a big step up in my art technique, and you mentioned it as well. Yeah. So, and I definitely blame that on just being able to sit and stew in the artwork in a way that I've never been able to do before.
Yeah. Interesting. And even for me, like I took on a number of long form projects just because I could.
Right. Is your mind kind of changing gears? Like you're no longer thinking about quick paintings, all your ideas are starting to become a little more long form?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because if I go back to that metaphor of the like container, and we fill the container, I don't know how big the container is when I start anymore, and I don't even care.
Right.
I can start, and if it it stretches from here to the mountains, then that's the container, like whatever that shape is, I just it levels within that space. One thing that
I think that's I think you kind of pinpointed it for me. Is what's stressing me out is the idea that like I have all these long form projects lined up in my mind, but if the world is going back to some semblance of normalcy in like the summer, September, a lot of those will be thrown off the rails. And I think that's what's stressing me out right now.
Yeah. And for me, one of the things I want to like sort of talk about, I have to sort of clarify a vision here for the dear listener. One of the things that I believe is important to do for human beings, creative ones in particular, but human beings in general, is you should try to spend time every day with someone who needs your help, someone that you can mentor, someone who you believe is on the same level that you are, that can be a peer to you, so that you can share ideas sort of from the same height. And then you should spend time with people who are far beyond you every day, or at least in a 10-day period, you should try to have a third of that time, so that you stay grounded in what's necessary and the needs of others, right? And then in what you're reaching for, but then also what you're capable of. And you're able to celebrate your wins. You're able to share in that. It feeds your ego a little, because the person who wants your help sees what you're capable of doing. And that, obviously that feels nice. We're full humans. Right. We have these things. But then when you're humbled in front of someone else who is better at something than you, it also is that kind of what you talked about, the how did you phrase it? Like competition, that competitive spirit is actually, it's actually lit in me when I spend time with people who are way better at something than me. I'm like, oh, I can be that good. I can do that. I can get there. And I feel that I used to do that in sort of 3-month zones throughout the year. We would do lots of school visits, and then we would do lots of shows, and then we would be doing stuff with other publishers or other people. Like you'd have these sort of seasons where we were in those different zones. Now I have that divided up in my day. Like almost every day, I'm literally with one of those kinds of people, because I'm doing mentoring. So I have people who do these one-on-one mentorships with me. Plus I'm, the kids, obviously we're teaching the kids, but the one-on-one mentorships. And then there's people I've reached out to teach me some skills. So I'm doing some mentoring of my own. And then there's, like the stuff that you and I are doing, and the people that we're working on projects with that are that peer-to-peer. And I get to touch on that every day, or like I have scheduled in the week certain days where those events are coming, and I get to plan for them and prep for them. And I've sort of got into this like idea machine mode that I found to be very, very good for me as a person, good for my family, good for me as a dad, as a husband, as a, all these other things. I'm nervous of that going away. But it's like so much of creativity in general is when there is a limit, the limitation kind of helps you sometimes figure out what to do.
It can, absolutely.
Right? And there was a bit there just before, or at the end of the before times, I guess is how I'd categorize it, where the sky was starting to seem like the limit. Like what country are we going to visit to promote our books? What publisher will we talk to? Where are we going to go? Where are we going to stay? We started like, talking about European tours, and it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but maybe not because it should, but just because it could. And now I find myself planning things that we should do, that we can do, rather than just what we can do.
Doctor, have I got the rabies?
Well, I can tell you better after I've examined the bat's brain under a microscope.
That thing's got a brain?
Oh, you'd be surprised.
We're going to be talking to a publisher, you and I, later tonight. And I am, it doesn't hold any, like there's no sparkles there, right? It's just, how can it help us make the best books possible, reach the right reader? And if they can't, then we don't need it. Whereas before I might have just been like, yes, let's just say yes to everything. Let's just, because there's no reason to have a limit. Now I see my time as more precious.
So are you saying like you're being more, right, you're being more careful with those decisions?
Yeah, in a way that is not, it wouldn't normally characterize as my way of operating.
Right. And do you think this is a better version of you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like it is. But I mean, you always feel, the villain always thinks they're the hero.
Right.
So it's hard to know. But I do think that I find myself putting a lot more weight on the interpersonal relationships I have in my close family unit than I used to. And I mean, that sounds bad, but it's just true. I had accepted that my relationship with my kids and my wife and my close family were balanced between how much I had to travel. And that was just how it was. And
Tash.
Studio dog.
Sorry, somebody walked by. Hey, come here.
Oh,
sorry about that.
No, don't apologize. I miss getting to know our new studio friends, like the doggos.
She's yeah, Pistachio.
See, and even is that dog's name Pistachio? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Because my kid is allergic to pistachios. Is that why you named it that?
Oh
but
my god, I didn't.
But he loves dogs. You're a monster.
I didn't name him. It was Darcy. Darcy came up with the name. But that's hilarious.
So here's a great thing. You would not have that dog in the studio if we were traveling.
This is another thing that stresses me out. I love having a dog. But what's great about like what we do is I get to hang out with this dog and take it on long walks, and like I'm not putting it in a kennel 8 hours a day like a lot of people do when they go to work. And yeah, I don't know. That's part of something I haven't quite figured out what's going to happen if the world goes back to normal.
Well, and I wonder too if it went back to normal, would we have to care? Could we just do what we're doing now and let it go back to the way it was? And I used to get such like FOMO over like New York Comic Con if it was a year I wasn't going.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like I'm cured of it.
I think at first, hey. Definitely in the beginning, I think I will be as well. Like, I have no problem in letting those first couple of events go by without attending, just to kind of, yeah, I don't know.
See who gets.
I don't want to say, yeah, I don't want to say that. I don't want to, because I'm sure they won't open things up until it's safe. But in my mind, I wouldn't mind missing a couple just to kind of finish up everything that I've started in this COVID pandemic lockdown schedule.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. You know, and I don't know if something we haven't really mentioned, I don't think, for the dear listener's sake, maybe we did. It's so far removed that at the beginning of pandemic, I did lose a cousin that I had spent some time with to COVID. So we had a real reason, dear listener, if you're one of those people who's like, what's the big deal? It's just the flu. I had a much more specific and direct experiential reason not to treat it just like a flu. And so
Yes.
that's where our caution comes from. You know, whatever you think, I guess, is how you're going to manage, dear listener. But just take care of the people around you. Okay, so let me ask you this. You're working on a couple of books now. Some that you
Yes.
initiated, some that we've started together, some that are just ideas sort of like on their way into becoming books. You've been doing tons of artwork. You've been spending more time building up your own like new home studio versus the downtown studio schedule. You've been doing all these things. What's the ones that no matter what, you're not going to give up? What are some of the habits that you don't want to change?
That's tough, because it's hard to pick what's hard to pick. I'm working from home more slowly, I've got more of a schedule at home than I ever had before. I think because we are renting the studio, I always felt guilty working from home. Like, if I'm doing artwork and doing my thing, I really should be at the studio. But that's kind of changed. And so working from home, I feel like I've gotten into such a better rhythm than I ever had before. And then the online store, in tandem with releasing new pieces, the dream was always to just make art, put it up on the store, and be able to sell it there. And I never really had that going before, because I didn't have a properly working online store, and I didn't have the system in places that I needed to fill a bunch of orders and ship them out.
I think another thing too that I'll point out that is important, is a salient point. The buying public knew that the best place to get that kind of work was at shows. So why would I order it online if I can get it from the artist in person? And now that all those shows are closed, they've gone to find their favorite work sort of where it lives now, which is online.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if those habits will stay as those shows reopen. You know, will that well dry up, or will it only get deeper?
I feel like it'll get deeper. Like, I think you'll create, you're always creating new customers when you go to these shows, right? And I think a percentage of those are always going to find go to your online store after the fact, hungry for newer stuff. And we don't necessarily go to the same show like year after year after year. So if you make a fan in 2021, 2022, I think there's a chance like they're gonna purchase something online from you. And so many of the customers that I've gotten on my online store have been people like they're pre-existing customers. They bought from me at a show, and like you said, they're there because that's the best place to get it now.
So many unexplainable things have happened here. There's something about the place. Your servants must have sensed it when they walked out on you. An apprehension of disaster.
One of the things that I had always, we had said many times on this show even, is that the essential element of going to comic conventions in the big cities nearest you, wherever you happen to be living, is that it gets you one-on-one FaceTime with publishers, editors, makers, the people who are in the trenches, and that all of my projects had really come as a result of those interconnections. And my big question mark fear of without that, how will those connections be made? And this year has taught me that I actually have done enough of that work now that there's a lot of recommendations. I have a long enough back catalog and a long enough sort of set of examples of what I can do that people are now seeking me out for what I have done rather than me selling them on the idea of what I can do. And that's a very different place in my career than I always thought that the hustle was inevitable and forever. And it is to some extent that you always have to be putting your stuff out there and asking for what you want. Absolutely a necessity. But on top of that, it's okay to answer the emails of people you already know who are like, hey, do you want to work on this instead? I was thrilled to trade projects. I had a project that I was sort of putting together that was sort of one that I'd have to do, if I wanted to keep doing illustration full time. It sort of was like a necessary evil that I maybe wouldn't get my way on everything. And then someone came along and said, hey, why don't we finish this other project? I found money for it. I dropped that cold potato so fast, right, in the hopes of just being able to do stuff that I had a sense of agency for.
Right.
But, so many of those older connections of people who actually have been great to work with have been bearing more fruit lately for me that it's almost surprising. When I was talking about being humbled by that's a little bit how it feels like when I was looking at that video, watching my own expression and being like, number one, who is that guy and where's his beard? And number two, oh, look, you look so, young Gregory of the before times. You look so touched and
2019.
That's right. Touched and nervous about these people coming to get you to sign their books. And that's how I feel now with these other projects. So rather than a book being brought for me to sign, it's like, hey, can you come and work on this project with us? Right. Because everyone is looking out, everyone's reaching out into their own networks. So that's been a change that I don't really want to let go of.
Let me ask you this. Do you wish you had hustled even more in the last 2 years leading up to this? Now that, had you known that COVID was going to happen, do you think you would have ramped up your events and appearances or things? Or do you think you were doing as much as you wanted to be doing and are okay?
That's a great question. Actually, my one big regret from the before times is that we did not spend a month in LA shopping Cassian Tonk and Rusted Water and following up on some of those TV connections that we had, which basically all exploded. If they had already been in production before the pandemic had happened, then we would have rode out that storm, sort of with your anchor down. But as it is now, we're going to have to start from scratch with all that stuff. So that's for me, that's one of the areas I wish I had hustled, because I had made some inroads on our behalf for that. And it just was something that was impossible to do that unless I followed up in person, just the nature of the relationships. So in that regard, I wish I had hustled more. I don't know if how possibly I could have. There's only so many hours in the day, but if it had been possible, that's where I would. But not with the book stuff. I think I was at maximum capacity making, working on 3 graphic novels at the same time, plus everything we were doing. If anything, I've realized that the quality and the quantity are in my control in a way that I didn't know they were. Like if I'm just being like as nakedly honest as possible, there was this belief before COVID shut us all down that none of those things were in your control, and you just always had to sort of like reel in and then cast again, right? Like the fisherman's, right? You just gotta throw that hook out into the water again and just keep reeling. Now it feels a lot more like like archery, right? The wind,
Yeah.
right? The distance of the target, that matters. But you can pick what you're willing to shoot for a lot more carefully than I was given credit to at the start. And I think that's also true of all the editors and the publishers and the people that we were working with. They're all locked up, many of them, with all their regular ways of doing things closed off. So when I reach out specifically to them now, even if they're strangers, the amount of time they have to respond with real feedback is much greater. And so I've been getting better feedback from loftier and loftier targets.
Yeah. It's the hustle and bustle of the world has slowed down a bit. That sense of urgency to everything does seem lessened, which is really, really nice.
Yeah. Now, we can address our privileged position in that we'd already built up some following, and we built up some, reserves, and we live in a city that is cheap comparatively to the rest of Canada. So we have all those things going for us. And not everyone, I'd like to acknowledge that not everyone is in that same position. So this is us in front of our listeners sort of talking about where things are, but not where we expect everyone to be or feel. And I've spent, and I know you have too, because you told me about it, but we don't have to name names. I've spent a lot of time talking with people who are not doing well, right? Who are a little worried, who are struggling, who aren't sure of what the next thing is going to be. And they are having a much worse time of this pandemic than I am now. But the first 3 months of it, I was very much how they are feeling. I can commiserate with that. And I feel like I have some practical advice to share, and in some cases some opportunities to share with people. So it's been something I've undertaken to do, is to reach out to those people in our networks from all those shows. You meet all kinds of people, you make friends all over the world, and to reach out to the ones that I know are like confused and worried about what that next thing will be, and just I can't provide them answers or solutions necessarily, just to talk to them and let them feel heard has been a big part of it. Like when you're really feeling down, you just want someone to know that you've been heard.
I think I'd like to lay some praise at your feet for a second here too. Thinking about the convention days, I would often kind of like sit and think, like, both you and I have our toes in books and posters and like publishing. We're trying all these different things and we're doing all these different things. And a lot of times we're surrounded by people who are really successful just kind of doing like comic conventions in specific, right? They were just doing the prints and just doing Artist Alley, and they weren't really exploring or putting efforts into anything else. And I'm really thankful for doing all those other weird little offshoots that weren't necessarily as profitable, but feel like I'm much more well-rounded and prepared for these unsure times versus somebody who just kind of found the one revenue that worked for them and didn't stray from it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I have had many conflicts in my life. I've grown to adulthood now, but those past conflicts with my own family have been around the fact that I wanted to embrace this artist lifestyle and this artist point of view, you know, self-expression as a career. And the one piece of advice that works no matter what, like from the business world, you know, my dad was very steeped in that world. Success is different than stability, and stability is created through diversification, right? You can have success, meteoric success in one field and just chase it. But if you are not diversifying, then the moment that thing that's working stops working, you have nothing. And so you want to diversify. So that's a lesson that really sank into me early on, you know. And so the more we did this and the more we worked on studio projects, the more I would say, well, we should look at animation. We should look at, you know, doing storyboarding. We should look at any kind of job where doing words and pictures, which we're good at, is needed. And that actually, yeah, same thing. It's, were they all as lucrative as our regular, you know, the before world, the before times? No. But was it enough to stand on? Like, did I fall over from the top? You know, had we built up this one tower and then it fell over? No, we had these other things holding it up. So I appreciate you giving me some credit for that, but I will pass that credit down through the generations to a lesson that my grandmother gave to my dad, which is, you know, get a job, but plant a garden.
Oh, you know something that we haven't heard yet, Judy?
I was just watching a documentary where they're talking about that in the evolution of a species as well. Any creature that got too specific, too specialized, never made it, because they got so good at that one thing, like eating that one thing in their environment, or, you know, whatever. But then any kind of environmental change wiped out that exact specific situation. They died, right? Because they were too specialized for just doing that one thing. And so as soon as the temperature got a little warmer, a little colder, or something happened, their one thing didn't work anymore. They're gone.
Yeah, totally. Looking at you, Texas. Is that too soon? Sorry, Texas. I feel for everyone who's suffering there. I know some people in Texas. Yeah, but that's just it, right? You want to think about what is gonna, I mean, and it's funny because it comes across as selfish in a way, right? Like, I carve out one day, one morning a week, where for 3 or 4 hours I get together with James Gillespie. If you're listening, James, I love you, man. And we just draw for no reason. We get together and we try new techniques. We draw a bunch of stuff. I've been doing like non-digital. I do everything with my hands. I make a big mess. And I just love it. And it feels selfish in one way, right? To say like, oh, it's so nice of you to just like sit around and draw for no reason. But what I'm actually doing practically is practicing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to develop new skills and not get so set in my ways. One of my big weaknesses, and I've said it before on this podcast, is my weakness that I see for myself is in color theory. I'm kind of a two-trick pony when it comes to color theory, and I really want to get better at it. That's definitely an area where I myself have found a thing that works. But when the client doesn't want one of those two things, I'm like, oh, right, now what do I do? Oh, no.
Right.
And so just trying to broaden that ability to bring more, you know, color is emotion. And so if you can bring more emotion into a two-dimensional world, then you can tell a better story. And it's just as simple as that for me. But it takes practice, and it takes like getting your hands dirty with a few different mediums just to figure out in what ingredients and in what proportions should those ingredients mix together to make colors, not just on their fingertips, but literally in my own mind. right? To think about color in certain ways. And that's been a really important step, something that we could never have done in the before times. That this is definitely a thing I would never want to give up. Like this set aside time to just experiment, in service of nothing, no project attached. I often would find ways to experiment on a project, but in this case, just experimenting. And we're not talking about a kingly sum of time either, just like, 3 or 4 hours in a week. But, 3 or 4 hours times 52 weeks, that adds up fast to learning time.
And in the before times, you probably would have been sitting in an airport.
And I did use a lot of airport time for doing that. That's absolutely true. But if I wanted to put 200 hours into a new skill, the airport limits me in I can only bring dry mediums and stuff that security doesn't think looks like a bomb. Right? Yeah. And when it comes to art supplies, it almost all looks like a bomb. Right? So I can't tell you the number of different pigments I had to leave behind early in my flying, because I would bring watercolor tubes or I'd bring whatever, and they'd be like, "No, sir, no, you can't bring this on the plane."
Remember the first fancy X-Acto knife I bought? It was and the first thing I did was put it on my carry-on, and it was I think it was still in the package, all ready to go for its first convention. And
so many knives, so many beautiful little knives I've lost to flights. Oh my gosh, just by putting it in the wrong bag. I lament you, sharps. Oh, you sharps. What time management things do you think you're going to bring with you back into the I guess the new world, into the here they come times?
I don't know. Is it maybe going to be easier to get into this gear of long-term projects now that I've been in it so long? Whereas when I was on the road and traveling and doing so much, I found it kind of hard to get into a graphic novel. It was kind of hard for me to kind of gear down into that. There's going to be 100 pages of illustrating this story. Is a very different gear than you have 3 days to have a new painting for the next convention. So maybe now that I've had a whole year of being in that gear of longer drawn out projects, it'll be easier to get into it and do a better job when there is what I'm hoping.
And to leverage that downtime of selling at a show or sitting at a show or being a guest at a show into your storyboarding for a large form project that's living in your brain.
Well, actually, so I always do my best storyboarding when I have no access to the internet or computers, or when I'm stuck somewhere where I can't do anything. That's when I figured out the Dragon Nanny, Joanna's not the villain. That's when I figured it out, was when I had no access to art supplies.
Yeah.
And I think with Cassie and Tonk, I figured that out when I was running, and I didn't running without music kind of thing. And the full Dragon Nanny storyboard came when I was in a city where I didn't want to use my internet because I was in another province and I couldn't max it out, and I didn't have a laptop, so I couldn't do anything. But I storyboarded the whole weekend, and that's what ended up being 90% of what became Dragon Nanny. So I've got a couple projects coming up, and I'm trying to put myself in a situation where I have to be without access to Netflix or the internet or my phone for a couple days.
It's funny you say that. I've been taking time every week to turn everything off.
Right.
I'm doing so many Zoom meetings and so many, there's so many screens in front of my face so often. I just one day, 4 or 5 months ago, I was just unplug everything that reaches the library where I work. Just unplug it all. I just can't. It's not allowed in here today. I just had to have every screen off. And I was so refreshed just drawing from my memory onto the page that I've made it part of the weekly practice is to
So I'm
turn
surprised
everything
I'm surprised you can do it in little doses like that. Like I find like there's a period of withdrawal. And so I almost have to like weather through the withdrawal of no internet before I start like getting productive.
But don't try it. No matter how clever you are, you can't hide murder.
Back in like 2004 or thereabouts, I'd made this little book called Winter Crown, which I'm showing to Justin now. He'd probably never seen this. It's this little like zine format, but this was when I was first starting out in comics, and I didn't really know what I was doing. You'll notice something similar between what I just showed you and what I'm showing you now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I had already done this kind of thing and then forgotten about it. But what I was doing here, which is different than what this Hedra author was doing. This is me cheating, essentially. What I did with this book, Winter Crown, was I said, okay, I've been drawing endlessly in my sketchbooks and I want to make comics. I'm going to take all my favorite pictures out of my sketchbooks and recontextualize them into something that feels like a story. And then I'm going to write over that story and see if I'm
right.
any
Like
good
you had the toolkit built, but you didn't have the story. And so you built the story from that toolkit. Yeah.
Right.
It's like, Lego.
Yeah.
You only have so many pieces. What's the coolest thing you can build with them?
That's exactly what I did with my sketchbooks. I said, there's a show coming up. I'm going to try and go to it. I'm going to try and have a little zine ready. What can I build given the time and resources I had? And I looked at my sketchbook as this palette, right? Almost like a pack of pencil crayons or something, right? And I only have so much of each one. And I cut them all up and I reformed them into pages. And I made comic pages out of things I had taken a long time to draw, but I had drawn without any reason to draw them. And it turned out to be I had such a great time making it. Like whether or not it succeeded as a little zine project, like I sold out of them, but I didn't make that many. I did them all by hand back in the before.
Is this when you had access to printing your buddy's printer after hours and just kind of went to town?
Yeah. Exactly. From that same era where I could just pay for material costs and my own labor and just experiment with things. I put a prose story in the back too, just like experimenting with that. And so I realized that I wanted to do the same thing. Did I lose you or are you still there?
I'm still there.
Okay,
yeah.
Just turn the video. So I realized I wanted to do the same thing. And what did I have lying around that was already finished?
Yeah.
That didn't go the place I wanted it to go. And so I dug up these old, like these 5 issues of a comic that I'd done for a publisher who basically turned out to be a crook and said, how can I recontextualize all of this into something new and fun and interesting and make the unit of exchange, like instead of in 5-panel grid or 4 panels that I was using, or 3 in most of that book, I split it up so that there are, between 15 and 20 panels on a page. So I compressed 5 issues of a comic into essentially 1 issue.
Yeah.
And man, did it ever change my relationship with that work. So dear listener, if you have some failed project on your hard drive or in your flat file somewhere, cut it up and put it back together as a new thing without words. And
how'd you get over it? Like I find I can't get over that. Like, oh, I can do so much better. It's hard for me to like dredge up old files and work with them again, because there's that just screaming voice in my head. Like, I can do better than this now. So why am I putting time into this old work when I should be doing better, newer work?
What I did was I changed the medium. The message was the same, and I sort of changed the medium, right? I told myself if a page, once I give myself rules. Okay, so I get all excited. I love talking process here. When you are doing an abstract painting, a lot of lay people or like people who've never made artwork before, they believe that abstract painting is like random nonsense. But that's not what abstraction is. Abstraction is setting up a system by which you will change a circle into a square, and then a square into a squiggle, and then a squiggle into a splatter. It's systemic, it's systematic. right?
Yeah, a lot of people have that misconception that abstract artists are not great artists, but usually they're fantastic traditional artists that know all the rules. They've just gotten so good they can break them all.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly true. And so what I did here was I told myself, okay, I'm going to set up a rule system to abstract this old work into a new work. Rule number 1, at least 3, if not 5 times as many panels per page. Insane, right? It probably won't work. And that's okay if it doesn't work. So I let myself free of that. And then
you don't have that pressure either. Like, this is an experiment for yourself. You're not the pressure is not there.
That's right. So it only took me a week to put this thing together because I'd already made pretty good pages. Like, they're pages from my ancient past. So you're right. Every one of them I looked at, I was like, oh dear goodness, what was I thinking? But when I cut them up into tiny cubes, I was able to pick only my favorite parts of each page.
This reminds me, like, putting together an art book. Like, you're going through a bunch of old stuff and you're kind of like putting together not only the finished version, but like the making of and every other like little piece that went with it. And you're kind of recomposing it in kind of a new format.
Absolutely. And you pick your darlings, right? In this case, I got to also guide the eye. Like, here's a page where here's a detail that I don't think anyone ever appreciated. I'm going to make that the center of the panel, right? You know, you get to play with those details. And also, it's no risk to me, right? Now, here's the thing. I have a meeting this Saturday with a publisher that I sent that to. Just sort of as a whim, I was like, oh, maybe I'll send this to this person I've been talking to about this other project. Maybe they'd like to see that. Is it going to turn into some giant lucrative book deal? No. Does it matter to me if it does or doesn't? No. Has it taught me something completely new about how I can look and manufacture stories moving forward? Yes. That's the reason to do it. Right?
And now you have it in kind of that ready to go folder. Say the world does go back to normal and conventions and everything are what they were before. Do you think you'd print this yourself and just sell it in person?
Yeah, 100%. If nobody wants it, if I can't get it to land somewhere, then I would absolutely do that. So one of the things that's at work in you and in both of our lives is that we have an impatience to produce things and to release them a few times a year. There's an impatience that comes from being able to, that you don't like the fact that it takes 3 years for a book to come out from a publisher sometimes, right? That's the worst. But it's necessary. And so here we are in a world where it's okay to wait for a long time for something. And so no big deal because we're all waiting. So if I send it out and I'm waiting and I don't hear back, I'll probably have decided by the time the world reopens what I want to do with it. And I'll absolutely, if I haven't placed it with a publisher by then, produce a version of it for the table. Absolutely.
We're so lucky to have that.
Yeah.
We're very, very privileged to be able to do that. I reflect on how thankful I am to be in this situation where I can make books without necessarily knowing if they're going to be picked up by a publisher or if they're going to make money or not.
Yeah, totally. Well, and that comes from that.
I think it's
that circles around to your own diversity, right? You've started doing enough other things,
right?
Let's say you have 5 things.
It's true, yeah.
Right, and one of them is one you do just because you want to, and 4 of them do because it helps keep the lights on. And that one that you do just because you want to changes.
How many large companies do exactly that, right? Like how much of Google's staff is just getting paid to blue sky things? Like, just come up with ideas and experiments and just try whatever, because somewhere along the line, somebody Smart realized, that's where some of the greatest things happen, just playing around, trying things out.
Yeah, if you've ever written an idea on a sticky note, asking yourself, I wonder if this is a good idea. Remember that a sticky note started just like that. The sticky note itself started as somebody's, I wonder if a glue that doesn't stick is a good idea.
I'm pretty sure that was a failure in the batch. Like they were trying to make a super strong glue and end up making like a super wimpy glue. And then somebody realized an application for it.
Yeah, because there's an application for everything. Like, if not for that shitty crooked publisher, who I now have to thank, really, for this new point of view. And I've said in public forums many times that we should not eliminate, but transmute. The job of an artist is to transmute a former failed project into a current useful thing. And so, given that, I think you and I are both trying that.
You'd thank them by name, but they've changed their name so many times to avoid lawsuits that we're not even sure what they're called anymore.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. It's amazing, actually, that if this book comes out, I hope my end result for getting this book with another publisher, one of my little dreams, is that the original publisher will try to stop it from being released, which will open them up. I hope they're not listening, because if they tried, then they would have to admit that I did it, which they've denied, as a way of not paying me. And so it actually opened them up to the countersuit that I'd been preparing in the first place. They'd have to admit that I did it.
That's kind of that's you hoping your ex-girlfriend sees you with your new current hot wife. That's what that is. That's the ugly side of you, Gregory. You're better than that.
That's true. It's true. Yeah, that's true. And my wife is pretty rad. So,
it's true.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what a wonderful note to leave it on. Oh my goodness. This has been Super Pulp Science, where we have talked about how genre gets made, how the old world and the new world have turned into this world, and what we might do with the cast-off remains of our past to recontextualize them into the new stories of our future. This is Gregory Kamichuk signing off and reminding you that you should join the fight and always make comics.